What's up, guys? In today's video, I want to talk about something that is maybe slightly controversial or maybe not so much, depending on your perspective. So, I made this video on Instagram originally, but for some reason, my video was not able to be downloaded. I couldn't even share it to my desktop. I couldn't even do anything with it except just delete it, right? Which was such a bummer for me to have that happen, but nonetheless, you can't always have things go your way, right? All right, so what I wanted to talk about in this video specifically is why are so many younger people, particularly, right, 18 to 24-year-olds are unhappy. So when I say younger people, right? I also don't want to focus only on them, but I do have to admit that this applies mostly to them, especially if they are 18 to 24, because there's a higher rate of such a problem among them. But this doesn't mean that this problem does not exist with people who are 25 and older. Okay, so just wanted to clear that up for you guys. The problem is, and of course, I'm going to give a solution as well. So I don't want to just focus on the problem. I also want to focus on what can be done to fix this problem. Okay, so after that long introduction, what exactly is the problem of today's younger people? Why are they so unhappy? And if I can sum it up in one word, or two words rather, it would be social media, right? So social media is actually the primary cause, in my opinion, right? Based on my own understanding of understanding social phenomena and things like that. It is the main culprit for causing younger people to be depressed, to be anxious, and to have all kinds of unnecessary stress in their lives. Right now, a lot of people might think that's overly simplistic, but if you do think that, I highly encourage you to pick up this book. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind. Now, this book talks about Gen Z, right? So, who are Gen Z? Gen Z are the new generation that comes immediately after the millennials. So, millennials are people born from 1980 to, I believe it's 1996. And Gen Z is the generation that is born from 1997 until 2012, right? So they are the first generation to be mostly born in the 21st century, with a minority born in the 20th century still, in the late 20th century. So, but for the purposes of that book, they consider Gen Z to be anybody born 95 and after, so 1995 and after. And here is what they have found, right? What they have found based on their research is that Gen Z, which in their definition is 1995 and after, has a higher rate of depression and anxiety as compared to people who were born before that. And they noticed that the reason for that is because of social media. Now, what does social media do, right? Social media, especially if you are untrained and not very mature and unable to think critically and try to figure out the difference between right and wrong and separate the wheat from the chaff, it makes it very difficult to have discernment when it comes to what's real and authentic and what's not real and inauthentic. So in other words, what's fake. So a lot of times Gen Z, they look at the things that they see on social media and they start to compare themselves. And oftentimes this process is very subconscious. Now, I'm not a psychologist, obviously. I'm a almost sociologist, right? So I'm a sociology kind of guy. And that's what I studied, and I'm still studying in school, almost done with it, by the way. So I look at more, not necessarily the cognition and the individual, but more on the societal level, the macro and meso aspects of, norms, behaviors, normative ethics, etc., etc., right? And social media doesn't just affect one individual, it affects the entire society. And it not only affects entire societies in terms of like affecting the individuals, but it has the potential, and it has actually done that, which is change our norms, to transform them, and to adopt a different set of ethics. So, whereas before, it was very difficult to compare ourselves to other people because we really only knew people in our neighborhoods, right? And I don't want to necessarily say me, I should probably say older generations, like people who grew up in the 60s and the 70s, but certainly even before that, they were more, they were less likely to encounter criticism and judgment from people who they didn't know and they've never met before. It was very difficult to have that happen to you. And so it was easier to just not worry about what other people thought of you and to have an easier time of accepting yourself and having confidence in yourself, right? Um, Whereas today, because they only knew people in their neighborhood, so they didn't really know anybody else outside of their neighborhood. And in fact, a lot of those people, when they were getting married and they were having friends, those people were almost exclusively from the same neighborhood. So it was a very tight knit, close knit community. And that's why actually crime was very low, because everybody knew each other. Now, contrast that with today, right? In today's society, a lot of people are exposed to completely different ideas, completely different individuals, and ideologies that they have never seen before. And so it comes as a shock, especially when that ideology clashes completely with one's worldview. And so when you leave that to somebody who is untrained, like a young adult, what happens is they become paralyzed and extremely shocked because they're not really sure what to make of this different interaction. And so in other words, they don't really have the experience to discern why this person thinks this way. What are the merits of their arguments and their worldviews, and what are the disadvantages and unmerits of their worldviews? And so what they do is they kind of internalize all the information that they're taking in because they don't have time to process it and digest it slowly in order to fully understand it, right? So in other words, they can learn to think critically about it by taking the stuff that is useful and leaving out the stuff that is not useful, right? So instead of having an easy way of processing and knowing what the truth is, we just become relegated to thinking that everything is true, or truth is subjective. And obviously, truth is not subjective. Not all truth is subjective. There are certain truths that are subjective, but there are also universal truths that we all abide by and should abide by, lest it cause societal discord and dysfunction. And so when younger people encounter those things, they see the images, they see the videos, they see the people in those posts on social media, they can't help but compare themselves to them. And especially if the person in the post or the persons in the post are doing something that the watcher, that the consumer of the social media is wanting to do, how do you think that makes them feel, right? Well, it makes them feel like crap, right? So they're not able to they have this fear of missing out. So they think, man, I wish I was there on that island, drinking from a coconut and having all these different resorts around me. I wish I had a girlfriend. I wish I had a boyfriend. I wish my car was that nice. I wish my house was that nice. I wish my clothes were that nice. And even to the individual, I wish my body looked like that. I wish my hair looked like that. I wish I didn't have lips or eyes or ears that were weird like that. And so, what that does is it lowers the person's self-esteem, especially if they don't have other things that they're watching that build them up, that encourage them. And not just on social media, but friends and connections that pour into them, that encourage them, that speak life into them, right? So when you don't have that, when all you have is social media where everybody's life is glamorized, what naturally tends to happen is you start to think, well, maybe that's how my life should be. And if my life is not like that, then guess what that means? My life is boring, right? And so what is the solution to that then? Obviously, I have provided certain solutions, such as, have relationships with people who are going to encourage you, who are not going to like feed into your delusion and give you false ideas, but who will give you practical advice and who will be there for you and who will support you. Because having, social science research has shown that people who have intimate relationships with others and they have at least one or two friends that are close to them that they can confide in and who encourage them, who build them up, are more likely to stave off illnesses and to have a better quality life than people who don't have those connections. So you cannot really substitute that kind of deep intimacy with shallow intimacy that social media encourages us to have. Now, social media can be a gateway to meet new people, but if you find yourself only talking to people on social media, but you're not talking to them in real life or to anybody in real life, you're in deep trouble, right? So it's okay to talk to others on social media because sometimes that's good. But if you are somebody who is discouraged and you want to stave that off, the negative effects of social media, pick up the phone, talk to one of your friends. Don't text them. Pick up the phone and, go out with people. Even if you don't like go out with other people and hang out with them, you can even go by yourself as long as you are in a social situation where there are people around you. It's going to take those negative feelings away from you, and you're not going to think so much about yourself because you're observing other people. So it's going to be difficult to be constantly inside your own head. And so, yeah, those are some of the negative effects of social media and why younger people today have a lower self-esteem. It's because they care about what people think about them. And a large part of that is because of social media. But the solution is build real, authentic, intimate connections in person with real live people, not just with people on the internet. And anyways, guys, I hope that encourages you, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.